Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is going to be part 2 on Noah and His Wonderful Ark. Taken from the Student's Monthly Letter by Manly P. Hall, July 1937, The Secret Doctrine in the Bible. Dear friend, Seth occupies a most important place in the order of the patriarchs. Seth is the first of the perfect men. According to the Kabbalistic interpretation of the Bible, there were 13 men born perfect. The inference is that in the end, these 13 will be the Messiah and his 12 disciples. There appears to be a direct reference to this mystery in the words of Christ. Before Abraham was I am, and you were with me before the worlds were. The 13 perfect men represent the flowering of the ages. In each order of descent of the patriarchs, there is one who is perfect. The first is Seth, and the second is Noah. It is written in the Talmud that Noah was born with white hair, a strange, maturely aged creature whose father was so vastly amazed at his appearance that he hastened to his guide and counselor, the ancient Methuselah, saying, "What manner of offspring or son is this?" Methuselah replied, "He is the one who is to bring the oblivion. Therefore thou shalt name him Rest, or the suspension, that is, to hang above all things." Therefore the child was named Noah, which means to rest, or that which moves not and is suspended above the oblivion. Noah is the 10th descendant from Adam, and Noah is the son of Lamech, and Lamech is blind. In the line of descent from Cain, every 5th patriarch is a murderer. In the case of Lamech, it is written that he was blind and used to hunt with the aid of his son, a small child. This child, perceiving a strange object at a distance, thinking it to be an animal, pointed his father's arm so that Lamech shot the creature and it fell dead. But upon approaching it, they discovered that they had killed a human being. The little boy explained to his blind father that the man who lay dead before them had a horn in the middle of his forehead, whereupon Lamech fell to his knees in great anguish and cried, "I have slain my own ancestor Cain," for the Lord had placed a horn upon his forehead, that every man should know him. Noah and His Wonderful Ark. The 6th to the 9th chapters of Genesis, inclusive, are devoted to the story of Noah and his ark. In order to understand this story, it is necessary to have recourse to the early Jewish commentaries. As Noah is the second Adam, he becomes the foster father of the human family according to the Jewish metaphysical system. Also Noah, preserving the just according to the will of the Lord, was a prototype of Christ, for as Noah saved his family and carried them over the deluge, so in the Messianic tradition, the Messiah is made to carry the souls of just men over the Armageddon at the time of the destruction of the world. In most ancient writings, Noah's Ark is not called a boat. Its name signifies some peculiar form of enclosure, a superior place to which men could go for refuge. The idea of a boat floating on the water was a poetic figure developed by some later theologians. It is merely a symbol of the spiritual world which survives the denigration of the physical universe. We can say briefly that the Ark of Noah with its 3 decks represent the 3 parts of the divine sphere. The Ark is a miniature universe. Kabbalistically, the Ark is shown to be the zodiac, the grand body containing all the animals and seeds of living things. The key to the whole story is the Ptolemaic system of astronomy. In the night of the cosmic oblivion, the 7 spheres which make up the lower creature are dissolved one by one and are absorbed back into the cosmic substance. The first to be absorbed is the earthly sphere, then the lunar, then the mercurial, then the Venusian, then the solar, then the material, then the Jupiterian, and lastly the Saturnian. As explained in Greek mythology, Saturn in the end eats up all his children. This means that during what the Hindus call Parlaya, or cosmic night, the lower worlds sleep, and everything that is below the zodiac rests in a state of chaos. The Ark is, therefore, the zodiac which rides securely upon the face of oblivion. According to the ancients, the mundane universe is enclosed by a crystalline sphere of stars called the angelic world. This sphere is divided into 3 parts according to the same rules still employed in astronomy. There is a northern hemisphere of stars and a southern hemisphere, and these are separated by an equilateral belt called the zodiac. These 3 parts of the heavens are the 3 decks of the ark. They are also the 3 sons of Noah. The mast which Noah placed in the midst of the ark is the polar axis. According to the Talmud, Noah took into the ark 365 kinds of reptiles and 32 major divisions of animals. As the serpent was the symbol of the year, the 365 reptiles are the days, and the 32 major divisions of animals are the 32 paths of wisdom described in the Kabbalah. These paths consist of the 10 sephiros and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. There are some fragments of the Noah myth not well known to the modern Bible student. According to one of these, there was an animal called the reem that was too large to get into the ark. In order to be saved, Noah tied a rope to the animal and allowed it to swim behind the vessel. This legend is derived from the same source as the Hindu account of Vishnu, who assumes the form of the great fish and pulled the ark through the sea by a rope fashioned to his back. As all the principles of life are enclosed within the ark, it is necessary for the principle of matter to be there also. Therefore we learn from the ancient Jewish writings that at the time of Noah there was also upon the earth a very good giant named Og, king of Basham. As Og was too large to get into the ship, he is depicted in the ancient Kabbalistic figures as sitting astride the roof being fed by Noah through a small hole or window. It was most necessary that the deluge should accomplish precisely its purpose. For this reason, the ancient writers go into considerable detail in describing how the oblivion was brought about. There were giants upon the earth, and if the waters came from below, the giants were strong enough and numerous enough to close the fountains of the earth. If the waters came from the heavens above, these same giants were so tall that the earth's surface could be inundated and they would still escape. To solve this problem, the Elohim caused the substances of the deluge to flow first through the sphere of Gehenna and thus to descend as a blazing deluge upon the place beneath, destroying all things. From this account, it is evident that the ancient Jewish rabbins did not consider the deluge to have actually consisted of water, but by the term water inferred rather cosmic substances. According to these same rabbins, the water of the deluge was both male and female. This was because of the waters descending from above the firmament, and part came up from the abyss. The 2 streams then mingled in Gehenna and flowed forth upon the temporal earth. The male and female waters are those described in the 1st chapter of Genesis as the waters which were above the firmament and the waters which were beneath the firmament. To release the upper waters, which caused the deluge, from the firmament, Jehovah Elohim removed 2 stars from the constellation of the Pleiades, and to stop the flood he replaced them by taking 2 stars from the constellation of the Great Bear. In a previous video, we learned that the sign of Taurus represents Cain. Therefore the Pleiades, which are in this constellation, are the children of Cain, and thus we discover a key to the reason for the deluge. The 2 stars borrowed from the Great Bear are guardians of the pole and represent the re-establishment of order or the repointing of the polar axis. When the flood subsides, the ark is said to rest upon Mount Ararat. Ararat is the polar mountain, the Olympus of the Greeks, the Meru of the Hindus. It represents the first firmament, or the heavens which are above the earth, that is the sphere of the fixed stars. Remember that Saturn is the chief of the Elohim, in that he is the eldest of the 7 planets or Chaldean gods. It is Saturn who says in the beginning, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the deep." When the first day of manifestation or remanifestation begins, the Saturnine principle of crystallization dominates space and the firmament is manifested. Mount Ararat, upon which the ark finally rests, is the foundation of the new creation. the first sphere of the renewal of life. It is therefore represented as a high peak, but it has nothing to do with the physical mountain by that name in Syria. When the ark comes to rest, and the Holy Spirit or breath of life in the form of a dove is sent out, the new day of manifestation begins. From these suggestions and interpolations from various sources, it becomes evident that the story of Noah is far more complicated and far more interesting than might first appear from the Bible account. It is therefore now necessary to interpret this analogy with the keys supplied by the secret doctrine. Noah and his wonderful ark. In this rare and curious Kabbalistic figure, the Ark of Noah is shown to be symbolic of the tomb of Christ. The figure of Noah lying in the ark has the nail wounds in the hands and feet to show that he is a type of the Messiah. Here also is the great figure of the Zohar sleeping the night of cosmic rest, Vishnu asleep on his couch of darkness. It is the creating power which has drawn its principles back into its own nature, its emanation symbolized by Noah's sons and 3 wives in the biblical story. The Ark of Noah symbolizes primarily a box or a container, and this is the clue to the whole interpretation. The sacred Ark or Arga occurs in the esoteric teachings of many ancient peoples. The Ark of the Covenant containing the sacred relics was carried by the Jews throughout their wanderings in the wilderness. A similar ark was venerated by the Egyptians, who depicted it in bas relief on the Temple of Bali. In the Egyptian legend of Osiris, the body of this god is sealed into an ornamental box which is set floating upon the river Nile. Deluge stories are to be found in the mythologies of all ancient peoples. For the most part, these accounts have been either completely rejected by modern science as fabulous or else entirely accepted as literal history. The possibility of a secret or allegorical meaning has been for the most part ignored. In Jewish metaphysics, it is taught that the superior principles reflect themselves into the material world, casting their shadows, as it were, into the substances of the deep. This is according to the Hermetic law of analogy, which describes that those things which are below are like unto those things which are above. By this rule, the spiritual nature of man is reflected in his corporeal structure, the body being the shadow of the soul. Every part and member of the body, every function and process taking place within it, bears witness to cosmic laws, eternal in the heavens, that is, existing forever in the superior nature. The ark is the symbol of the seed. Metaphysically, this seed, in this case a man, is a spiritual vortex containing within it the germs or roots of his mental, emotional, and physical natures. The seed reflected downward becomes by Hermetic analogy the physical body itself, within which, as within a chemical retort, the alchemical processes of life take place. The physical man is therefore a unity or one living creature suspended from a unity, one spiritual entity. The body is the physical manifestation of recondite and superphysical agencies, fashioned like unto its cause, and bearing witness unto the law. Plato refers to the body in one place as like unto the shell of an oyster, and in another he calls it the sepulchre of the soul. This sepulchre, sarcophagus, or burial chest is also the Noahite ark. The thoughtful student will therefore realize that the account of the deluge has 2 widely different meanings, one relating to the sphere of causes and the other to the sphere of effects. The thoughtful mind can never cease to admire the rare skill with which the ancient scriptural writers incorporated many meanings into a single script, that the book itself, like the truths from which it stands, might be actually all things unto all men. We have learned that Adam is the spiritual causal man, the higher face of the microcosm, the most ancient of the most ancient ones, the ever-existing self. We have learned that Noah is the second Adam, that is, the reflection of the eternal self, in the substances of the transitory universe. Metaphysically speaking, Noah is the incarnating ego in its aspects as father of the three bodies which emerge from its own nature and constitute together the human personality. The three sons of Noah are the mental, emotional, and physical principles. Their wives, or as the Hindus call them, Shaktis, are the physical correspondents, the brain, the heart, and the reproductive system. Thus we have a complete pattern. Noah, the incarnating ego, his wife, material essence itself, his sons, his emanations, their wives, the physical foci which these emanations set up. All is contained within the aura itself, the ark, or as the Hindus call it, the ego. It is written that Jehovah Elohim, angered at the evils existing in the world he had fashioned, determined to destroy his creation, but that the principles of this creation might not vanish with it. He caused the one just man and his family to build the ark, take into it all the forms of life, and float in security above the oblivion. This means, first, that at the dissolution of the universal system, the principles of life are withdrawn from the material sphere and retire into the cosmic seed or germ, which rests securely in space until the gods refashion the world. Second, that at the end of a great wave of evolving life upon the earth, as for example humanity, the human principles retire into their spiritual counterparts and rest until a new order of bodies are created for them to inhabit in the next world cycle. Third, that at the end of each physical incarnation, the superphysical principles of man retire into the ego, there to rest in the after-death state until the incarnating principle builds a new body, a new heaven, and a new earth, when these principles emerge again in the mystery of birth and growth. But we have said the allegory has two distinctly different meanings. The second cycle of interpretation is that by which the ark becomes body rather than seed. It is stated in the Apocalypse that for 42 months the Gentiles tread over the outer court of the temple. It is also stated in this same work that for 42 years, periods or eras of time, the seven-headed serpent shall have power to blaspheme. The 42, a most mysterious Kabbalistic number, is generally concealed under the round term 40, even as the number 70 in the Old Testament always infers 72. Jesus fasts for 40 days and for 40 nights in the wilderness, even as Noah floats for 40 days and 40 nights through the deluge. Kabbalistically, this fact identifies Noah and Jesus as both being personifications of the same principle. Ciphers are frequently ignored in certain forms of the Kabbalah. Thus, the 144,000 in Revelation becomes merely 144, or 12 times 12. Referring to the zodiacal cycles. The 40 days of Noah therefore becomes 4 cycles or periods. By one key, the 4 races which make up the involutionary cycle or the cycle of descent, ending with the Atlantean or 4th root race. The ark is the mundane universe in which the souls of men and of all living things are locked or sealed during the involutionary process. The outer world or temporal existence is symbolized as a chaos. Man is a spiritual entity, living in the material universe as light surrounded by darkness. He is a cosmos floating in chaos. He is potential wisdom surrounded by ignorance, that is, by the sphere of the unknown. The 40 days of Jesus in the wilderness represents the travail of the human soul achieving realization, and the 4 cycles of which it is a symbol are the sufferings and travail of humanity seeking to establish order, peace, and security in the phenomenal world. According to the Kabbalah, Noah carried the body of his ancestor Adam into the ark, and when the deluge had subsided, re-entered the body on the hill of Golgotha. Of course, this is a mystical fable by which is arcanely set forth the esoteric truth, that is, all forms or bodies, of which the ark is a symbol, carry within them the primordial germ, the root or seed of species and race. Adam, not as a person, but as a type or life principle, lives eternally in its progeny, or creations, and is the true germ of fertility by which all things are made fruitful. Adam continues in its offspring even as all causes continue in their effects or are made manifest through them. In the Greek mythology, there is a descent of deities from the first and eternal principle, which is denominated unaging time. In the mundane order, that is, in the hierarchy of gods controlling the material universes, unaging time, the primordial principle, is manifested through Zeus, who is termed the son or offspring of first cause. If we consider the primordial Adam to be a symbol of the eternal principle of life, then Noah, like Zeus, becomes the mundane manifestation or direct descendant of the first cause. For this reason, the Kabbalists refer to Noah as the second Adam, the foster or second father of the races of the earth. If we see the ark as a figure of the physical universe, then we understand how all living things are grouped together in one small vessel with 3 decks, the measurements of which are entirely symbolic. We also understand why this strange ship should have but one window, a problem which has perturbed agnostics to no end. The Chinese signify the material universe as ruled over by an Ogdoad, or hierarchy of 8 principles. Quan and Qin, the male and female potency, which combine in 6 combinations called the sons and daughters. This account belongs to the most ancient of the Chinese sacred books, the Yi Ha King, or Classic of Change. Confucius wrote an elaborate commentary upon this work, which he declared contained the secrets of the whole universal emanation. Poets have likened man's terrestrial state to an exile in a desert land, humanity cast away on a little globe in space surrounded by an inconceivable infinity. In the Jewish metaphysics, the ark is the planet or the solar system floating in a sea of cosmic space, its decks crowned with the complex genera of living things. Thus, the Deluge myth is part of the story of the fall of man, told differently but still retaining for the wise its secret import. In the microcosm, the ark, being the human body, contains within itself innumerable living powers. During the prenatal state, the embryo floats ship-like in the sea of the amniotic fluid. At birth, the individual organism is launched forth upon the stormy sea of life, beset with its innumerable perils, Kabbalistically represented by the 40 days of the deluge. Noah hearkened to the voice of the Lord, that is, he lived according to the law, perfecting his soul and enriching his consciousness with the many experiences which result from the mystery of living. As a consequence, the Lord protects the life of Noah and brings the ark at the end to a safe resting place upon the Mount of Illumination, Ararat. Part of the 33rd degree of Freemasonry includes an interpretation of the symbolism of Noah and his ark. Considered mystically, the story of the flood is the wise man's mastery of adversity. It is the philosopher surviving the onslaught of ignorance. It is the illuminated mystic floating safely over the chaos. Other interpretations should also be considered. Some 10,000 years before the beginning of the Christian era, the island of Poseidon, the last remnant of the great Atlantean Empire, disappeared beneath the surface of the ocean as the result of a terrific natural cataclysm. The records of this destruction have survived as tradition and form part of the legendary history of most ancient races. Plato had received the account of the sinking of Atlantis from the records left by Solon. He realized that the historical Atlantis offered a magnificent opportunity to combine the history with philosophy. Plato was an initiate of the Eleusinian mysteries. It was forbidden by this order that any of its initiates should openly reveal the secret tradition. So Plato cunningly concealed in his account of Atlantis the metaphysical doctrine of the initiates concerning the fall of man and the constitution of the human soul. The loss of the prehistoric empire was used to veil the fall of the angels. Atlantis, with its vast population, became symbolic of the etheric sphere that descended into the humidity of generation. The sea swallowing up a great race was the sea of matter, swallowing up the hierarchy of human souls at the beginning of the mundane cycle of manifestation. It is only necessary to compare Plato's account with the Pythagorean system of mathematics to discover the correct key. Also, the city that consisted of alternating zones of land and water arranged in concentric circles was no material community but the solar system itself, as can easily be seen by anyone who cares to diagrammatically draw out Plato's description. As Plato used the history of the lost continent to veil the secret of man's lost spiritual state, so likewise did Hindus, Chinese, Chaldeans, Mayans, and Jews. There can be no doubt that there is a direct relationship between the story of Noah and the lost Atlantis, but what most writers have been unable to discover is the relationship between both Noah and Atlantis and a third metaphysical tradition. Noah, born with white hair and prematurely aged, is of course the symbol of mind, or that which is above the confusion of matter. Noah is the knower, as Noah is the intellect, so Og, king of Bashalm, the good giant, is the personality or body consciousness, as we learn from the interpretation of the Cyclop myths of the Greeks. By another interpretation, Og is the oversoul or the anthropos, the one-eyed giant who is too big to go into the body, the ark, but sits on the root, that is, dwells in the upper parts of the aura and is fed through the one small window, the pineal gland or third eye. There is also a legend to the effect that there is a baby born in the ark. This is the soul which is born from the chemistry of the body, and is identical in its significance with Harpocrates, the infant god of the Egyptians described in the Osirian cycle. The infant is therefore the celestial self, the Christ within, born amidst the animals, for the Ark of Noah and the manger of Bethlehem are identical in meaning. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider helping Wars of the Rosies through donating through PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the description. Thank you very much.